There's probably one subject that's been on your mind since we started talking in this class. One topic that tends to dominate everybody's thinking when it comes to medicine. One topic that, especially when I showed you the head tilt chin lift in terms of opening the airway, that everyone was a little bit hesitant about, and that is the spine. So we're going to talk about the spine and what it means to take spinal precautions, what we have to actually worry about when we're dealing with the spine, and how spine injuries occur and how they affect us as medical providers. To start with, I'm going to tell you something, and the pun is not intended, but if it helps you remember, then that's great. When it comes to emergency medical care and folks who start getting into wilderness medicine, the spine has a tendency to paralyze you all into inaction. Meaning, when you walk up to a patient who's just fallen off their mountain bike, tumbled down the hill, skied headfirst into a tree, one of the most common things you're going to hear from everybody around is, don't move, don't stand up, don't let them move, nobody touch them. Now my question to you is, why? Why do we say that? And where did you learn that? What's the science behind it? Well, let's start with where you learned that and why that is such a common misperception that's out there. The idea of not moving somebody really stems from the general idea of basic first aid. If you've ever taken a general urban first aid class, which is a great class, you have to understand that that class is designed for an urban population. For a population that if they're not sure what to do, if something goes wrong, they can call 911. And they can have someone who is higher trained than them show up and take care of this patient. So the philosophy that's behind that class is we're going to teach you a bunch of stuff. But if it's out of your range of knowledge, just don't do anything. While that's okay in that situation, it leaves people with the idea that you shouldn't move people, that moving people is a bad thing. I'm about to tell you that it's not. Now, what I'm about to tell you is probably very, very different than what you've ever heard when it comes to the spine. And that's okay. I'll preface it by saying this. It's all right for you to sit there and question and say, well, Nathan, I'm not sure if I believe that. I'm going to give you a lot of facts. I'm going to tell you a lot of things. And hopefully by the end you go, oh, I understand. But if you don't, 1, do some research. 2, when we get together, ask me a lot of questions. I'm happy to give you all the information. But what I ask you, especially when it comes to this information right here, is if you don't believe me, just don't stop there. Stopping there when you don't believe something is just ignorance. When you don't believe something, do the research. And that's what we need to do here. So how does this relate to the spine? Well, everyone is very worried about the spine because it is a main portion of our central nervous system. Your brain sends out all the signals to your body to control every function. And its main wiring system is the spinal cord. Now, when I say to you, you're worried about somebody having a spine injury, I would be willing to bet that the image going through your head right now, or the signs and symptoms, are someone who's paralyzed, who can't move a limb, who can't feel something. I would say to you that's wrong. And it might sound like semantics, but semantics matter. A spine injury is an injury to the vertebrae, to the bones in your back. If I were to say to you the patient has a broken forearm, they broke their radius or their ulna, would any of you say, oh my gosh, don't move their arm? They might be paralyzed from the elbow down. No, in fact, it's very common for the general public, somebody falls, hurts their arm, for someone to come up and say, hey, can you wiggle your fingers? Can you move that? We, in fact, encourage them to move it as an assessment. Why is our perception different when it comes to the spine? Again, I understand it's different because we think to ourselves, that's the central nervous system. If something goes wrong there, it goes really wrong. I want you to remember this. A spine injury is an injury to the vertebrae, the bones. We can treat it just like any other broken bone, which we'll talk about when we get to orthopedic injuries. What you're actually concerned with is a spinal cord injury. That's when damage occurs to the cord, to the signal carrying device, and prevents those signals from the brain to getting to where they want to get to. That's what worries people. That's what causes paralysis, numbness, tingling, lifelong complications. It's extremely hard to do this. It's extremely hard to get spinal cord damage. There are lots of research studies that back this up. This is not new science. This is not something I'm just telling you so we can do less, so it doesn't take more work. That's extremely hard to damage the spinal cord. This doesn't alleviate the fact that we're still nervous about moving people. That somebody is injured laying there on the ground after falling over the handlebars on their mountain bike going downhill, and I want to move them because it's a dangerous situation. They want to stand up. They want to sit up. It doesn't alleviate the fact that that takes a lot to do that. I might be nervous. There's something you have to understand about getting a patient out of the woods that will help with all of this. The easiest way, the fastest way to evacuate a patient from the woods is by having them walk. That's it. If we're going to carry someone out, if you're going to call in a rescue, this is a very long, person-intensive process. If I want to get out the fastest possible way, the easiest way is to have them walk. I want to be able to say to myself, I can move this patient and not worry about their spine. So here it is, the simplest way you need to understand this. If an accident or an incident occurs and a patient incurs a spinal cord injury, they have a spinal cord injury. Now that may sound simple, but that's what it is. A spinal cord injury will occur at the time of the incident, and they will have cord damage. If the accident or the injury occurs and they do not have spinal cord damage, then they don't have spinal cord damage. What is going through your head right now, I would be willing to bet, is you're saying, well, but Nathan, what if, you should always be careful of asking what if questions, but what if they fracture some vertebrae and those shards of bone are sitting there pushing against the spinal cord, just waiting, and if I move the wrong way, they sever the spinal cord? I understand that fear, but the science doesn't back it up. It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work like that. And there are a lot of physiologic reasons why, but it doesn't work like that. You either get spinal cord damage when the injury occurs, or you don't. Moving someone, allowing someone to sit up, to get in a position of comfort, to walk out if they can, if they're actually able, is not going to cause any more harm. In fact, putting someone on a backboard or a spinal immobilization device causes more harm than doing nothing. So what do you need to do? You're going to walk up to your patient. You're going to look at them. They had an incident that had the potential for cord damage. Now you have to remember, that incident has to be enough to have caused potential cord damage. If someone is sitting on a rock and simply slips off the side and lands on their butt a foot down, that's not a spine cord damage incident. But someone tumbles down a trail, someone skis into a tree, someone goes over the handlebars of their bike. We have a big mechanism. There's potential. So I walk up to my patient. I do my primary assessment, and I can ask them, sir, ma'am, can you wiggle your toes for me? Can you move your legs? Can you wiggle your fingers? If they can, if they don't have any numbness or tingling, they don't have cord damage. And you can ignore the whole thing. You don't need to worry about a spinal cord problem. On the flip side, you walk up, say, sir, ma'am, can you wiggle your toes for me? Can you move your legs? Can you move your hands? Any numbness or tingling? And they say, I can't move my legs. I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my arms. It's numb and tingling all the way down from my waist. Okay. Now, I'm not being flip about it, but what you have to understand is they have spinal cord damage. It's not going to get worse. You're not going to make it any worse. You cannot do any harm to them. they have it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do anything special. It simply means, well, they're not going to be able to walk out. That just means I'm going to have to carry them out. If a patient has spinal cord damage, we do not put them on backboards. We do not spinally immobilize them. That is the wrong thing to do. This is not just a wilderness thing. This is a medicine thing. This is what we do in medicine. We do not put people on backboards. We do not immobilize people. If I get to you, if I find you, and I think you have spinal cord damage, I move you to my stretcher in a safe fashion, and then I simply allow you to be in my stretcher in a comfortable position for you. That's it. And if you don't have spinal cord damage, then you don't. And I move you whatever way is the best way to move you. This is going to be really hard for some of you to grasp because you've spent a lifetime learning the exact opposite of this. I understand that. Take a moment. Rewatch this. Think about the science behind this. Ask questions. We'll make sure that we understand this. But you do not need to let the spine paralyze you into inaction.